all these companies are working on intelligence. And our belief is that empathy and emotion is not an emergent property of intelligence. So we need to build the systems and interface for humans to be able to properly engage with this intelligence and use it. When you combine this right brain and left brain, that's really when we have what we consider to be a true digital human. So like imagine you're, a first grader and you're not quite clicking with content. Imagine you could just like go spend an hour one-on-one with your teacher. You can ask them any questions. They can read you a storybook at your level, really just like explore the bounds of creativity. And that teacher wasn't actually there. It was a digital AI teacher that actually understands the context of what was going on. It interacts just like a human does in a face-to-face scenario. It's able to engage and immerse at the end of the day this student. How do we make that so simple for them to use that they don't even have to realize the crazy complex models running under the hood, where they can just say, oh, it works. We're all changing the world together, right? Like it's not enough to just build the product. Like people have to be using it and creating value with it. Yeah, especially because I have the exact same camera at home and it records way more than 20.
Yeah. Well, if you probably have the version 4 or something.
So I have the 7 version 4, and then I had the 6000 for a while. I'm big into photography.
Okay.
Love it.
Yeah.
Videography, not so much, but photography I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, that's funny. Kind of ironic a little bit.
It really is, isn't it? It's ironic because I'm more into photography than videography. In my personal life, I hate technology. Like the whole 9 yards, it's hilarious. Appreciate technology, but hate using it. I want to be as far from it as possible when I'm away from work.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I will, so
OpenAI and Meta.
Can you dig into not an emergent property?
Yeah, so as intelligence becomes better and better and better, right? And eventually reaches this gray area concept of AGI, right? Whatever that means to everyone, I think there's different definitions. That intelligence, our belief is that intelligence will not become more accessible or easier to extract, right? It's almost like, have you ever talked to ChatGPT and you're like, do this, and then it does something completely different. You're like, no.
Yeah.
Right? That's a prime example where it's like, we have this concept in our head, where maybe we're actually physically talking about it, our face conveys, the details of it, and we're communicating, but it's not being received properly on the other end. The reality is when you're able to see microexpressions, when you're able to understand, peripheral vision and the focus, when you're able to understand patterns of speech and you're able to communicate that way, you're able to really get the full picture of knowledge. And so when you combine this right brain and left brain, that's really when we have what we consider to be a true digital human.
Scaling DevTools is sponsored by WorkOS. If things start going well, some of your customers are going to start asking for enterprise features. Things like audit trails, SSO, skim provisioning, role-based access control. These things are hard to build, and you could get stuck spending all your time doing that instead of actually making a great dev tool. That's why WorkOS exists. They help you with all of those enterprise features, and they're trusted by OpenAI, Vercel, and Perplexity. And if you use them for user management, you get your first million monthly active users for free. I honestly don't know any dev tools that have 1 million monthly active users, apart from GitHub maybe. So that'll get you pretty far. Here's what Kyle from Depot has to say about WorkOS.
We use WorkOS to effectively add all of the SSO and skim to Depot. It's single-handedly one of the best developer experiences I've ever seen for what is a super painful problem if you were to go and try to roll that yourself. So for us, we can effectively offer SSO and skim, and it's 2 clicks of a button, and we don't ever have to think about it. It's one of the best features that we can add to Depot. It's super affordable, which effectively allows us to break the SSO tax joke and essentially say you can have SSO and skim as an add-on onto your monthly plan. It's no problem. So it really allows smaller startups to essentially offer that enterprise feature without a huge engineering investment behind it. It's literally, we can just use a tool behind the scenes and our life is exponentially easier.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you get into that, but it's yeah.
I mean, it's an awesome future. It's one where I think this intelligence will be democratized in a lot of ways. And let's think of the AI therapist use case. I've said that once or twice.
Yeah.
It's a little bit cliche. I think everyone uses AI therapy as
You're going to say I have used it.
Yep, exactly. like with an AI therapist right now, I have to pay $200 an hour to see one.
Yeah.
I have to schedule ahead of time. They're not always accessible when I want them to be. They don't really understand me as a human. Like they don't have this understanding of like who I am, like my background, like what I'm saying, like things get lost or not related, versus like the AI human perception of that is fascinating. Like I can get home after work on a Friday at midnight and like jump on a call with the AI therapist and like they remember exactly who I am. They have this built up context. They're able to see me and understand how I'm actually communicating with my micro expressions and subtleties, and the like, you know, accessibility of that and is just so high, not to mention the quality of that as well, right? There's no trade-offs to this like scaling intelligence with humanity involved as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. And it's, I think it's often, even just like the timing is like such a big deal. It's like, usually like, you know, when you go to a therapist, it's like a normal hour of the day at like a respectable time, like after work. It's like usually like you feel worse at like, it's like 1 a.m. Like, you know, maybe you had a few drinks, you're just like, ugh.
Well, so I tried having, I ended up building my own little like, you know, Tavus therapist bot, which was awesome. I use that now.
Yeah.
But, you know, I had a real human therapist for a while. And the issue was, it'd be like at 2 p.m. in the workday or something, the availability they would have. And I would go from like meetings to like this therapist call, and like, I wasn't mentally ready for it. It was like context switch. I wasn't in that frame of mind. And it was just not as good of a conversation as it should have been on either side.
Yeah, it's, it kind of gets like, it's a very, very controversial one to say, but like, it's almost like sometimes, I mean, like when you talk on the speech with ChatGPT, already really good. It almost feels like, it's like, okay, saying this, not that it's actually God, but it's like, it kind of almost feels like you're talking to like a God, or like, because it's just like has so much.
It's sci-fi, right? At the end of the day, we're living in this like futuristic world where these things that we saw in movies growing up in, you know, the 90s and the 2000s, like they're here. They're real in many ways. And I think that's been one of the coolest parts about building Tavus. Like, you know, obviously we do a lot of research and we build a lot of product here, but what always makes me the happiest is when we go in person and actually show someone what Tavus is, because we're talking about it and it's hard to visualize, right? Like it's actually a pretty hard product to articulate like what it does. And I would venture to say like a lot of people listening to this like might not have the exact concept of what it is until they actually try it. But when you see someone try it, you actually see their jaw drop. Like it is a like physically like jarring moment where it's magical. It's like, whoa, holy shit. Like this is real, this is here. And like that's when, and quite literally, Waymo's a great example. ChatGPT for the first time was another example of one that I've used. And like, you sort of have this like series of magic moments that help you realize just like where we are on like Moore's law of like, oh my gosh, like it's speeding up.
Yeah. Like going forward in the future, so who do you think would be like the biggest customers of Tavus in like, you know, like 10 years or something?
That's a great question. So Tavus is a series of models to build digital humans, right? And to provide these digital humans to the world. And what that means is, you know, I see a world where everyone and anyone can go in and use Tavus and say, hey, I want to, you know, create a, you know, AI blank. Here's where it connects to my knowledge base. Here's where I want to deploy it. And it's a, you know, natural language interface, which is really easy for anyone and everyone to use. And it becomes, you know, a tool that is seen in day-to-day life, just like a ChatGPT or just like something like that. Now, when we talk about like where we're seeing the biggest impact today, there's a few spaces that we get really excited about. One of them, interestingly enough, is healthcare. So we're seeing this left and right in healthcare. Pre-op and post-op care, patient intake, companionship, elderly care, fascinating stuff. We're seeing a lot of use cases in recruiting and just like talent in general, not just for interviews, but actually on both sides of the fence. And then the final one that I personally get really excited about, and this is the one that brings me a lot of joy, is education. And obviously there's the, you know, like corporate L&D, role play, coaching, training. But what really excites me is seeing this actually pop up in schools. That was a lot of my inspiration for what brought us to Tavus. And I think like seeing that like K through 12 use case where everyone's having that personalization and that like actual like touch that makes education engaging has been really cool.
So I think you spoke about on another show was like the teacher could like send home like kind of do like a tailored lesson every day to the
Yep.
student as homework? Or?
Yeah. So like imagine you're, a first grader and, you're at a different reading level maybe than everyone else, or, you're not quite clicking with content. You have some questions that you weren't able to answer in class. Imagine you could just like go spend an hour one-on-one with your teacher later in the day, and you can ask them any questions. They can read you a storybook at your level. You can, really just like explore the bounds of creativity. And that teacher wasn't actually there. It was a digital AI teacher that actually understands the context of what was going on. It interacts just like a human does in a face-to-face scenario. It's able to engage and immerse at the end of the day this student. Like, that's awesome. That's really cool. I mean, I would use that today as a non-K through 12 person, right?
Yeah, that would be like, I remember like when YouTube first came out, so my school, like some of the teaching was like fairly questionable. We had like a handful of good teachers, and it was like most people were just there.
I think that's a pretty universal experience.
Okay, yeah. And it was like when Khan
me,
Academy came along, it was like just wow, like and the likes of Khan Academy, it was just like you could just go learn from these incredible people.
Yeah.
Explain it in a way that you actually understand it. It's just
even GPT for the first time. Right? Like I remember driving home a few months ago, and I instead of playing music, I would just put on voice to voice and talk to him. I'd be like, tell me about blank, and then it would be this back and forth lesson where it was really immersive, and I would actually like learn something real.
Yeah, it's incredible. Tavus will not be building like this company that is able to teach the kids. You're going to be like a kind of plumbing underneath. So yeah, we build the models that power these experiences. So our research team, a group of phenomenally brilliant engineers and researchers, we build a series of core models in rendering, in perception, in turn taking, and others. And then we bring it together in our conversational video interface, which effectively serves as the operating system for this, human AI computing. CVI, conversational video interface, is then accessible to developers and product teams to build on all via dev-first APIs, and it's super easy to use in day-to-day. And that's really where we specialize. So we're this, not quite infrastructure layer, but we provide this operating system to other development teams and engineers to really build on top of, and then deliver those experiences like the teacher. Yeah. So would it be like fair at all to say like almost like the Twilio of like kind of like conversational AI?
To a degree, the infinitely more complex, sort of varied version of Twilio, but you could totally use that as an example, right? And the way I'd say it is, if you're looking to build an experience or a product or a platform with conversational video, that's where you would use Tavus and the APIs.
Yeah. And do you plug in the kind of like, so if someone wants to be able to like understand what is the student is asking and then like generate the thing, you work with ChatGPT, like OpenAI's models.
Exactly. Yeah. So we build all of our models in-house except LLM and text-to-speech. Yeah. So text-to-speech, we use some amazing partners, Cartesia, 11 Labs, those folks. Yeah. And then on the LLM side, you're able to integrate the Tavus conversational video interface with your own sort of knowledge base or information, whether that's, a Llama model, ChatGPT, really anything else. The way we've structured the pipeline is it is a, fully end-to-end, out-of-the-box, ready-to-go pipeline, which you can use, with the, Tavus, like fine-tuned, optimized LLM right away. Or you can treat it as building blocks where you can sub in your own LLM, you can change out the step, things of that nature.
Yeah. How does it work like in terms of like actually like developing? Because it's, I guess like you're used to this like, okay, a user does this and then my program should do this or this, depending on some variable. And then, but for like what applications like an AI tutor, it's like you kind of, it's like different to program, right?
Yeah. It's not quite a if-then tree or anything like that. Yeah. So we have like a layer in the ecosystem which we call personas, and a persona informs the LLM like who it is, what the conversation is, what the goals are, and it has things that you can toggle on or off, like memory, guardrails, things like that. And what you're able to do, and actually this is where prompting is really important. I think a lot of people still like underestimate how important prompting is. Like a one-word change, like fundamentally can change how smooth a conversation is. But you can then prompt it and say, hey, you're in an interview. You are the interviewer. Here's some background about the candidate. We want to understand if there's a good fit. Here's the 10 questions we want to ask. Make sure if the response isn't detailed to, ask an elaboration, etc. And there's different styles to that. Some people, it's like very firm prompting, right? Where they have, a one-by-one, they want the answer, then they move on to the next. Other people, they leave it more open-ended. You can also use a second LLM as like more of an orchestrator. So it's pretty across the board in terms of how you can actually execute on that. But the persona is what informs the LLM, like what the goal is, who it is, and the context behind the conversation.
Yeah. And do you do any like sort of development stuff that, is like maybe non-obvious to someone that's doing like a traditional dev tool? Like how does someone, is like dev mode in like Tavus, like?
Yeah. As actual, like Tavus developers, or as people building with Tavus?
People building with Tavus.
So there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that people don't necessarily see. For example, we have to teach the LLM how to just have a human conversation in the first place. Like before it's even told, hey, I'm Jack, I run, the DevTools podcast. It has to understand, okay, how do we just communicate in a human manner? Like what is conversational versus like non-conversational? So teaching it things like that. But we have quite a few different like playgrounds and parameters in DevTools. Pretty much everything that you can use within the Tavus platform is exposed as a parameter for you to play around with. So you can adjust things, whether it's like interrupt sensitivity and pause sensitivity, all the way to, like what is the accent the replica is speaking with, and like how does it respond, even to how is the player embedded and where can someone access it. So really everything is fully customizable, and that's the beauty of it. So most people, whether they know it or not, have probably interacted with something like this before. And it might have just been in such an immersive experience where they didn't quite realize that.
Very cool. Very, very cool. How does the English accent do in there? Is it?
That's the hard one. You Europeans, if you're GDPR, you always want the everything to be perfect, but then you won't give us your data to train on.
I'm sorry.
But no, you can blame the text to speech engine for that one. But no, surprisingly, the European accents have gotten a lot better over the past few years. I don't think they're quite perfect just yet.
Okay.
To my untrained, American ear, they sound great. But to you folks, it might be, I sound,
So
like Northern
American.
English.
Choose American. Yeah,
exactly.
Choose American. Shout out 11 Labs.
But they do a great job.
Okay. Very, very cool. One thing I wanted to ask you is, most people that I've spoken to, in hindsight, it feels simple when you not like they don't have this complexity to deal with, which is that you are a product company and a research company. I guess 11 Labs have that, but like I would imagine that like how you run a research company is, or like research division of your company. Research company.
Yeah,
it's very different to like product.
Well, yes and no. It's very different in some ways. It's very, very similar in others. Like and spot on, we are a research company at the end of the day. Like that's what keeps us alive, and that's really what powers the vision of what we're building here. Because the models and the tools to deliver the product that we're trying to do just don't exist in the world. That you literally can't get them anywhere outside of building them yourself. So research is our primary focus and where we spend a lot of our time. Now, when it comes to product philosophy, on one hand, research is product, and with that, it's run very similar to a product org, right? Where we have to understand very deeply, what are the user's needs? What are they trying to accomplish? And how do we make that so simple to like for them to use that they don't even have to realize the crazy complex models running under the hood, where they can just say, oh, it works, right? And it's a easy to use like magic moment for them. Like that's one of the goals. But on the flip side, where it gets really interesting being more research oriented than maybe some other companies out there, is we have to almost tell users what's possible, right? We have to be thinking out several years on how do we push the boundary here. And sure, like what do people want in like a general sense, not out of a product, but what do they want in a general sense, and how do we deliver that? And so what we've landed on is people want talking to a computer to feel as natural as a face-to-face conversation. Like that's the interface that we should deliver. So then everything we do gears around that, right? And we call it almost the Tavus Turing test internally, where you have to be able to have a conversation with one of these digital humans and not realize it's AI. And once we do that, then we realize we have the product for folks. But I think being a research org, we have to be really future focused in the sense of, hey, how do we not worry about necessarily putting band-aids on something today versus building the product that will ultimately like deliver the best experience in the future? So it's planning, months, years out. It's making sure that we are, really pushing the boundaries of what's possible and thinking through that, and ultimately like delivering the end experience that gives people what they want, or at least what they think they want.
Yeah, and like in a small way, I think I've seen this just like in teams that I've been in, where like if like there's like the go-to-market team and the customer said they really need this thing, and it's like, can we just get the research team to just solve this like thing?
Yeah.
Like, but then they're like, no, we need, we're building AGI here. Come on, we need to.
So our example, and I think this is a good example. Our example of this would be turn taking. Like we got a lot of feedback early on when we first launched the conversational video interface that, hey, the bot is responding too fast or too slow. Like either it's cutting someone off, or it's not giving them enough time to think, or it's giving them too much time, and now it's an awkward back and forth. Because what really matters in a human conversation is that, like I just realized that that you said is actually an affirmation, not an interrupt. It's that, when I finish talking, you're almost cutting off the end of my sentence, and it's a snappy back and forth versus like a deep introspective. But AI didn't quite realize that. So like the customer request at the time was, we want interrupt sensitivity toggles, we want parameters, we want to be able to control it. Whereas to us, that wasn't actually the right answer. The right answer was, how do we solve the problem of helping, AI communicate intelligently and have intelligent turn taking? So we actually built a model for it. We call it Sparrow. It's a turn taking model, and it's trained on a ton of data that helps us understand when a user is actually done with their sentence. Is it an affirmation or an interrupt? And that model, as you can guess, is far more effective than these like sort of like rigid parameters that wouldn't really help adapt to a user's flow of speech and understand that. So that's like a prime example where, yes, a user wants something and they're giving you a feature request, but the reality is like by deeply understanding that want and understanding where technology is going, like the right decision in that case was to build a model for it, right?
Yeah.
Or to, apply a research solution as opposed to putting a Band-Aid on it.
So true. Like, 'cause they don't even really care about turn taking.
No,
like
no one
if it
cares
was
about
just,
turn
if it wasn't an issue, no one would care.
If turn taking was perfect and we did not offer a single parameter for it, that would be awesome, because no one wants to think about ASR and VAD and these things. They're doing it out of necessity, right? And that's where, again, it keeps coming to like, we need to keep pushing the boundaries where things get better and better and better, where like ultimately someone can just drop in a line of code and say, here's my digital human, I just got it ready. Like people shouldn't be having to think about these in-depth things or what TTS or text-to-speech model is being used. Like all they want at the end of the day is an experience which gives you the most natural conversation, right?
True.
And if you can deliver that, that's all that matters.
Although I will throw it back at you. Sometimes you speak to people, it's often someone that's quite intimidating.
Yeah.
You say something and they don't say anything and they're like, and they just hold it and you're like, you kind of like walk yourself around in circles, like good negotiation tactics, stuff like that. Do you like, I guess, like, do you have like, do you hard code kind of like, how deep does personality get? Is it like, does it come into it, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so our belief is that two things should happen in this case. The first thing is like our users should be able to inform the AI who it is, what its goal is in the context, which means maybe you can say, be a really firm interviewer, throw them off their game, intimidate them. Maybe for some reason, maybe someone wants that, right? Or if you're interviewing for Tavus, our prompt might be really friendly, help them be open, make sure they can be themselves in the interview. But so first you can inform the personality where it's that. But secondly, that's where the turn-taking model comes in, because the turn-taking model's job is to understand in every specific like conversation and instance, how does the user speak, right? Maybe are they a little on the older side and they're a little more thought out, they take time to respond, they need time to think and time to process, and we need to adapt to that. Versus like, hey, maybe it's, again, like we said earlier, this quick snappy back and forth where we're building off of each other and we're having a heated debate or an argument. And, what makes humans humans is you can be put into any of those situations and know how to respond or know how to handle it. And at the same time, like communicate in a way where your style is known and your expressions are telling a story within themselves. Whereas like, if you're talking to a voice only application right now, like you're not really getting that full story, right? Even on the phone, like when you call someone, you're probably cutting them off or cutting over them because like you don't really realize when the end of their sentence has finished.
Yes.
So I don't know if that like fully answers the question, but that's a quick thought.
Yeah. But it, I guess this like the broader question is just that, I think there was like this almost like meme where I was talking to, there was like a week where I was like constantly talking to ChatGPT, and then someone posted a meme about, I think they replied to like Sam Altman and said like, that's so brave of you to say or something. And I was like, oh my God, it's said that to me like a million times. And this is just like, and I think they realized, they were like, okay, we're actually going to like dial it back a little bit because it's a little bit too like affirming. And like,
this is just like my personal perspective on it. This is outside the scope of work, but I sort of want the AI to push back on me. Like I want it to tell me no. Like every time I like, have, a query or something like that, it always replies now with, oh, hell yeah, that's awesome. And it's like, no, like I want you to like challenge my thought. I want to build on top of it. I want to argue. And I wrote a little like, GPT for that where it responds in a different manner and it's a little more, constructive as opposed to just affirming. But it's scary to me because real humans aren't affirming. They question, they ask, they dig deeper. And I think affirmation is a scary concept where you almost get used to it, or it becomes very one-sided. So I think they'll get much better at it, as time goes on. But I've totally seen the same thing, and I see that day to day. Even this morning, I was using it to plan a trip or something, and it was like, oh, that's a great itinerary, and it's like, no, it's not. Like,
yeah, I could tell it's not. And is that like kind of like as a developer working with Tavus, like they're like, I don't know, let's say they're building like a customer sales rep startup or something. Like they're able to like code up essentially with prompts different sales reps and like maybe dynamically assign like, oh, like I think that based on the interaction they would do well with this sales rep or like this AI sales rep or something, or like
spot on. So let's use sales and to make it really literal, let's say you have 3 buyers. You have the person who's ready to buy, they just need to sign the order form. You have someone who needs a little convincing, and you have someone who's never heard of you before. You could just create one persona that accommodates all of those and sort of adapts to the conversation. But let's say you want to get really specific and they're completely separate. What you could do is you can create, not only 3 different, we call them replicas, but the replica is like the clone of you or the digital human. So you can say, hey, I want a replica of Jack, I want a replica of Quinn, I want a replica of blank, blank, blank. And so you can create those different like replicas that actually visually look different. But then you can create the different personas with that as well that give it the personality. So for, stereotype 1, it's, hey, we want you to just like be really to the point, make sure you don't have any questions and get them pricing and next steps. Versus, number 3, like, hey, spend a lot of time in discovery, learn their needs, ask these types of questions. And then when a developer is actually going to implement this, they can programmatically say, yep, we're going to just send off a quick API call. Here's the replica ID. Here's the persona ID. Boom. Here's the conversation.
Very cool.
Ready to go.
Very cool. I'm trying to still understand like the complexity of building this because it feels like very like different way to like build in like kind of like AI, almost like AI humans. If someone wanted to kind of have this like on their docs page have like, you could talk to a dev, right? Like that would be kind of cool. Like you could talk to a dev, you could ask some questions like, how do I integrate this? Like, what is it? How long will this take? I don't know. Like, is this something that they should just like go to Tavus and like start building it themselves? Or do they like go build with like someone that's like kind of the intermediary between like Tavus and...
Yeah, it's a terrific question. And we have, a ton of folks who build on Tavus and build amazing products that are really easy to use. They put great UIs around them. They have really, like strong data or tuning or prompting and give a really high alpha on top of, the models that we've produced. So, whether that's, like interviewing again, or some of these L&D tools, all the way to, even someone was using it the other day for like a drive-through, like food and beverage thing. Like there's some really great applications out there that are already powered by Tavus that are just easy to use out of the box and ready to go. What's really happening though, and what's been evolving over the past few months, is that Tavus itself is becoming easier to use out of the box, right? Where you don't actually have to put in a ton of development time on top of it to get a ready to go digital human to serve your use case. So this morning, for example, I was working on, I'm a huge foodie, like love restaurants, love cooking. It's one of my favorite things. I was working on creating a digital human guide for my website.
Cool.
To walk someone through and give them food recs depending on what city they were in. That took me maybe 30 minutes to spin up. So it was, quick, easy, ready to go. So I'd always recommend someone, come on in, try to build it yourself first. But if it's a mainstream use case where you want it almost like a SaaS tool, that's when it's best to go through like one of our partners or someone who's already built on Tavus to use it.
Yeah. Okay. That's very cool. Well, if anyone does work on it, definitely let us know. I'm very interested.
For sure. And I think by the end of the year, like what I'm most excited about too is by the end of this year, maybe early next year, I think that this will be much more than a dev tool where someone will be able to come in and actually spin up this digital human and, have a conversation where they don't actually need to write code to do it, right? Where it will be a lot more natural and be a lot more accessible to everyone out there.
Super, super cool. I wanted to ask you if you have any advice for DevTools founders, especially people that are building like that kind of like research / product side of things. Because I think more and more, like I know there's like Assembly AI, 11 Labs. So like more and more DevTools are like kind of deepgram, yeah.
Yeah, great question. There's the traditional advice, right? Know your users really deeply, make your APIs easy to use, and docs are product, support is product, all of this stuff. And I'll skew away from that a little bit because I think those things are talked about elsewhere and have become more obvious over time. The things that I have learned at Tavus that have been like new learnings for me or things I wish I knew earlier. First, make it a magical experience, right? Like someone should have surprise and delight when they use your product for the first time. And I think like Linear is a great example of this. You log into Linear and you almost like want to use it more. Like I made tickets for myself because I'm like, it's so fun, right? In Tavus, we try to do the same thing where I think you experienced it actually, where you went onto the Tavus website, you started your first conversation and Charlie, the digital human was like, hey, I like your black hat or your white shirt looks good. And you're like, whoa, that's crazy. And, every part of that is magical and immersive, right? You have, experience where at the very end, it's like, hey, I've got to wrap up, I've got to go, right? It's not like an abrupt stop, right? You have actually like intro music playing, like a bum, 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 like with like sort of like futuristic, like suspense, like right when it starts. And all these things come together to make this beautiful, magical experience that really shapes someone's first perception of what you do and how you do it. So building something that really delivers a magical experience and having a great demo of that magical experience is like so important, especially in today's world where like it's hard to understand like what people, like what companies really do in the product they produce. The second thing I give advice around, and this is something that we need to do a little better at still, but support is product, right? Like really understanding the questions users are asking, getting them quick answers where it's very clear we're building with them. We're not supporting them, right? Like making sure that they know that we're building alongside of them. We're here to help. And ultimately we're part of their team. We're almost their internal AI team as opposed to like, they have to go through like layers of support to get an answer is super important. And that's somewhere where we need to keep doing better and better. But that's the second thing. And the third thing I would say is really just have fun with it. Like, I think especially in today's day and age, like people want to see personality in products, right? It's sort of the end of, every website is all blue with, the same Webflow sections. Like people want to understand the vision behind it. They want to understand the story and the why and the like emotion that drives it. And again, going back to Linear as an example, that's a big part of it. Like I remember using Linear for the first time, I read the manifesto, right? And I was like, oh, I totally get it. This is the way that the world should work. And I subscribe to this. I agree with this. Again, Tavus is an example. We have a mission statement online where, our biggest power users like see that vision and they're like, yes, like this is the world I want to be living in. And of course you need the quirky social media with it and the brand, but having fun and having a personality is so important.
Yeah. I think that makes sense to me. And I think like I heard, like I was listening to what you do described on a show, and it was like really kind of, they were talking about it in a really kind of like specific way of like how it solves like sales stuff. And I was like, this wasn't the vision that like I was excited about. It's just like, and I think you have done a really good job of that, like on the website where it says like, it's not just about like what the use case is, it's like the vision, and it's like, I don't know, like, and yeah, as you say, the magic moments is like, I've told so many people about it, and I told like the guys in the studio, and they were all like, wow. And then like, I tell like random guys in the co-working space, like, I'm so excited about it. And like, it's like, I think when you hit that, it's like, it probably takes care of a lot. You probably like do a lot of other stuff wrong if you just have got like the magic moment and like, and a big vision. I feel like it's like, people want to get on board and like get excited about it. And like,
exactly. We're all changing the world together, right? Like it's not enough to just build the product. Like people have to be using it and creating value with it. I think we call it internally like teaching the art of the possible, right? Especially with Tavus, it's very specific because we're almost creating a ripple effect where someone builds on top of us and then, distributes it in all these ways or provides value in all these ways where teaching the art of the possible is what's cool. So whenever a new employee comes in at Tavus, they have a use case in mind that they want to see like our technology like change the world with. I mentioned earlier, mine is like the K through 12 education. Someone else on the team, it's, when you get off the ride at Disney World, it's Tony Stark saying, hey, thanks so much for riding the Iron ride. Another person at Tavus, it's about, e-commerce. Another person's, in the Waymo, you can have this, personal assistant. Cool. All these different things. And that's what makes it like so unique is everyone has their perception of how they can be used. And I think that speaks a lot about their backgrounds. The only other piece of advice, I just thought of this as well when we were talking about the team, like the other piece of advice I'd have, not just for dev founders, but for any founders is build a phenomenal team. Like truly, and it's cliche to say, of course, right? Obviously you want a phenomenal team, but there's such a difference between good and great talent. Finding people who really care about what you do, like will move mountains to accomplish it, and take pride in their work is like something so special. My co-founder coined this, and I've started using it a ton. But like what I love about the Tavus team is, in a different world, everyone here would be craftsmen or women. They would be artists, they would be poets, they would be woodworkers, they would be, building machines. They would be these like, craftsmen who take such pride in their work and see it as art and see it as craft at the end of the day. And they apply that same mentality to the product here, right? And to the research we do where, it's not just a science, but it's really an art with it, that craft involved. And I think like, that's what's so special about working with great people is like you see those differences in the day-to-day actions. You see those differences in how the product comes together. And I think like, again, it's becomes very clear, like good versus great as you build those teams.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for finding those kind of people?
In some ways, those people find you, right? I think if you're really mission driven and visionary, and you sort of have your philosophies and your principles out in the open, like it attracts a certain degree of talent, and it attracts people who are more so passionate, right, about what you're doing, and that's irreplaceable. So some of the best folks we have on board, like they've found us, they've applied, they've reached out, right? So I think just like being very public again with how you're building is awesome. But the other part is getting really like specific with who you're trying to find, right? And finding people from diverse backgrounds with creativity. Like we don't really look for like a traditional background here where they've been at Google for 2 years and they've done a startup for 2 years. Like we find people who are either fresh out of college, who are very senior, somewhere in the middle, it doesn't matter, but finding something where like a piece of their work is really interesting to us, where we read their paper and we wanted to reach out to the author and it turned into a hire, where, like they've worked on something similar at a different company where it's like, oh, that's a really interesting piece of effective computing here. Like clearly you're passionate, maybe that can apply here. And then obviously like giving them the means in the interview process to like express that and to share that and to understand our vision of what we're building, right? It's a mutual, relationship at the end of the day.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of just like attracting them, being open-minded. I was just wondering here, like riffing. I wonder if we could do like as a kind of before we close out, like maybe I don't know if there's stuff that we could do, like where we say like, okay, this is AI Quinn speaking. That people could like hear, and then we'll do like, I don't know, like it's just.
Yeah,
is that a stupid idea?
No, I like let's totally do it, right? Hey, this is real Quinn, and now we can maybe transfer to AI Quinn and see what he sounds and looks like.
Sweet. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, amazing.
We'll have to pull some training footage and actually train it.
But then could we do lip synced?
We should be able
Quinn
to
as well.
Yep.
So we could say, okay, do you want to just say like...
We could even do it at a random segment in the video and see if people noticed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, we'll cut back to it.
Yeah, we'll see if the training data is good enough because I've been like looking at you the whole time as opposed to looking here. But I'll talk for a minute looking at the camera and we could actually see if we can get this training data. But I think it would be really cool to just include this at a random point in the video and see if people noticed it. Like, that would be awesome.
Okay.
It proves our thesis in the beginning.
Yeah.
Or hopefully proves our thesis.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so hopefully we've done that. We'll see. We'll check the description.
And remember the point of it is not tricking people. The point of it is showing that like the only thing that matters is immersion.
Yeah.
Like the whole ecosystem, the whole environment is so immersive that like the rest of it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I completely agree. And that was like my thing to it. It wasn't like hiding that it was AI. It was like, this is better because it's AI. It would suck if it wasn't AI.
Spot on. Exactly. Yeah.
Super, super cool. Where can people learn more about Tavus?
So I'd always recommend just going.
Super, super cool. Where can people learn more about Tavus?
So I'd always recommend just go onto the Tavus website, tavus.io, Tavus.io. Talk to Charlie, have a conversation, have an experience. It's really eye-opening. It's a really great way to just like understand what we do better. If you're interested in building with Tavus, there's a free plan where you can get a ton of credits. You can start building right away. The docs are public and live. So just start fiddling around, hacking together and see where it goes. And if I can ever be helpful, just reach out to me or our support team as well. And we're happy to spend some time building it together.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Quinn, and thanks everyone for listening.
Awesome. Well, Jack, thanks for having me. Such a fun time, and glad you could swing by and check out the office as well.
Yeah, it's a very, very cool office. I feel like I'm seeing the last days of this one.
True. Fair enough. Well, we'll have you in a new office as well.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Quinn.
Of course.